Hammer time.
One of the things that comes up in marriages a lot is the use of pornography. The fact that there are a lot of people who are addicted to porn. They watch porn, and they just cannot get away from porn. And porn actually hurts people, not physically, but it has some consequences to it that are extremely unhealthy, especially those who are in marriages. It has significant consequence, and oftentimes I think this gets downplayed, and I'm not sure why. I see some. Yeah, well, that's one physical consequence. That is one. And as far as I understand, the longevity of intercourse is one of them as well. Not simply not being able to get it up. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And so one of the things that I see in church communities is, on one hand, they want to talk about sex all the time. And so, every year or, every 6 months, they have to talk about some sort of sexual, they have to have some sort of sexual series that they talk about. And they want to bring in crowds of people because they're talking about this issue. And then you have some churches that seem to not really even deal with it. It's kind of that gotta be relevant type thing. And I get it, because they want to engage with people, and we live in a society that is highly sexualized, and we think that quote unquote sexual freedom is a good thing, right? And so those things need to be addressed, but not in the way I think a lot of churches go about it. And then on the other hand, you just kind of see churches and they kind of don't address these issues. And we have to have some balance, and we need to be talking to people and communicating to people that these things that they are engaging in and that they're doing are actually harmful. They're harmful to you. They're harmful to the person that you're in a relationship with. And so even if you're not married, this is still going to be relevant to you, especially if you're a guy. But this is relevant even if you're a girl, even if you're a female, because as a single person, you should be preparing yourself to enter into a covenant with another human being, with another person. And so one of the things that I tell people all the time is, before they're going to get married, I ask them, so how much porn do you look at? How much porn do you look at every week? Because if they are engaging in watching porn and looking at porn, that is going to hinder their sex life. That's going to hinder their relationship with their spouse. And people think that, well, I get married, so now I get to have sex. And so that's going to make me not want to look at porn anymore. Oftentimes what ends up happening is quite the opposite. They end up not having as much sex as they thought they were going to have, and they look at just as much porn as they were looking at before. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was kind of go through some of the ways that porn hurts you and your relationship with your significant other, and then give you a book recommendation on how to battle pornography and deal with that. So the first way that porn hurts us is that porn invites comparison. So pornography, nowadays, you can go onto a site and you can pick blue eyes, brown hair, nice feet, the color of skin that you prefer. All of this stuff, it's tailored to you, similar to how social media is tailored to you. If you're on Facebook and you like a conservative Facebook page, you're going to start, they funnel you things that line up with that conservative Facebook page. They find ways to get at what you need, and they cater to your needs because they want you to come back and continue to use the site. And in porn, what that ends up doing is not only does it create for us the ideal, the sexually ideal person that we want to engage in sex with, but it sets up the ideal versus the reality, versus the person that you are actually supposed to be intimate with. And when we do that, when we create or put forth the quote unquote ideal, we end up devaluing the person that we have made that commitment to. We end up choosing sides. And oftentimes, because we're selfish, we choose our ideal instead of the person. Yeah, so you're not actually intimate with those girls though, Wooly. That's fiction on your screen. That's not intimacy. That's having sex with yourself. That isn't intimacy. Right? That isn't. And so we end up comparing, and even the people you see on the screen, right? They're dolled up, they're changed. You don't see all of their flaws, right? They cover it up like they do with supermodels. And so you sacrifice real intimacy with a real person, right? With a real person, so that you can have your own ideal. So that you can have your own ideal. And we end up comparing our ideal with reality. And that's a mistake. And when you do that, you end up stealing joy from your relationship. You end up stealing intimacy and joy and meaning. You end up stealing that what God has created us for, to be intimate with another person. It robs that because of that comparison that we set up. The second thing is that it encourages lies. It encourages secret behavior, which when you're in a relationship can be extremely, extremely harmful. Typically what happens in a God-fearing relationship, in a God-fearing relationship, or one that is pretending to be a God-fearing relationship, or where you know the person that you're intimate with, that you've made a covenant with, would not appreciate you going on the internet and lusting after women that aren't her, you end up being extremely secretive. You end up spending time alone that otherwise you could be spending with her. You end up separating yourself, and you end up in a pattern of secrecy and of lying. And this is extremely dangerous in a relationship, because at the very foundation of any relationship, whether it be a friendship, whether it be a working relationship, whether it be an intimate relationship, at the very foundation, especially in a marriage, is trust. That's the foundation. Where there is no trust, there is no relationship. And where there is a lot of trust, there is a deep relationship, an intimate relationship. And if we're going to be, especially men who seek to build that trust with our wives, we need to be upfront, we need to be open with them, and we need to be honest with them. And unfortunately, what porn encourages is secrecy. It encourages secrecy because it encourages selfishness in and of itself, because your gratification is more important than her gratification. Wooly, I don't even know what you're talking about. Either engage with the conversation or leave, okay? Those are your two options. Or I'll escort you out, okay? Engage with the topic or leave. All right? Seriously. a mature, serious relationship is one that leads to marriage, Wooly. Is one where you commit to the other person for the rest of your life, where you're willing to lay down yourself for the sake of the other person. Okay? That is a serious, committed relationship. All right? Exactly, Wooly. I am describing relationships in a way that is contrary to your experience. That's right. Because are you married, Wooly, by chance? I don't think you are, right? Are you married? You should get married. It's a joy and it's a blessing. It's a blessing. All right? Porn, and I mentioned this earlier, porn also engaged still saving cash for a real wedding. Yeah, dude, the real wedding isn't as important as making that commitment in front of people. You don't need to save up for a big wedding. Get married, bro. Get married. Commit to that woman. Make her your wife. Have some babies together. Raise a family, and it's really a blessing. So anyway, porn robs us of intimacy, of real intimacy, and I mentioned this earlier, because what it ends up doing. The commitment before God and before witnesses matters. It's not the piece of paper by the government. I could care less about that. It's the commitment before God and before witnesses that matters. All right? Where those witnesses can hold you accountable to the commitment that you make in public. Anyway. But now we're getting into like where church matters and why you should become a Christian. Because it's... Anyway, never mind. Porn robs us of intimacy. When you are staring at a screen, okay, and you're looking at the most intimate action that a man and a woman could do together, when you are witnessing something that is supposed to be reserved for the most sacred of commitments that two human beings could have with one another, what you are essentially doing is you're saying the intimacy that I have with my wife or with my husband, if you're a female, is not, you actually degrade that intimacy. You actually lower that intimacy by elevating a false intimacy to that level. To that level. And you end up being, strip clubs, they're just as bad. Just as bad. It's lust, bro. All right? You end up robbing your significant other of the selflessness of sex. There is a selflessness when it comes to sex in intercourse. Right? The man doesn't work for his own gratification. The woman doesn't work for her own gratification. The man and the woman work together for the other person's gratification. That's what makes the fact that God has designed us in this sexual way, that intimacy in sex is at its core selfless. Pornography is selfish. It's all about self. It's all about my own gratification. It's all about me and me gratifying my own sexual desires, not someone else's. And when you selflessly love another person, and when you give yourself to that other person in a selfless manner, shown in one of the ways through sex, that is how we grow intimacy. And so you rob your partner of intimacy when you give yourself to a false image on a screen. When you give yourself to that image on the screen, you are actually denying the intimacy that you're supposed to have with your wife or your husband. And then the last thing. It is a form of adultery. Watching pornography is a... I appreciate that. watching pornography is a form of adultery. Of course, yeah, it's definitely wrong if you're single, Howie. Definitely wrong if you're single. And the reason is because Jesus makes it abundantly clear. The person who looks at a woman with lust has committed adultery with her in her heart. See, God cares, and that's Matthew chapter 5, verse 28, I believe. God cares about our motivations. He cares about our hearts. He cares about our desires, right? He cares about where your mind is at. Because where your heart is, there your actions will follow, right? Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. Out of the heart, actions take place. Our motivations matter to God. And if you ask any Christian woman, any woman who seeks to follow after Christ and serve her husband, right? If you ask a wife who is a fearer of God, she is going to say, yeah, I would be extremely disappointed. I would feel hurt if my husband was looking at porn. Why would they feel that way? Why would they feel that way? Because intimacy in marriage is more than just what you do physically, right? Marriage isn't just about the actions. It isn't about saying in front of God and in front of people that, I'm going to be with you until death do us part. There's meaning behind those words. You're saying to your wife, you're saying to your husband, I am going to put you first. I am going to love you selflessly. And when we decide that pornography and getting this selfish gratification is more important than loving your significant other, your wife or your husband, when that's more important, you're committing adultery. You are putting yourself before her. And that's ultimately what adultery does. It puts self before the other person. And so I hope that that this has been beneficial. Hopefully this has been somewhat encouraging. One of the books that I want to relationship to his church. You mean marriage? Yeah. You're right. If you're referring to marriage, I'm assuming. Yeah. Amen. Yeah, gotcha. If you are struggling, and this isn't just with sexual sin, this book was recommended to me by my brother, Michael Griffin, brother in the Lord, and I'm actually walking through this book with a few of my, thank you, I appreciate it, with some of my senior high students actually, and it's called Killing Sin Habits, Conquering Sin with Radical Faith. It is by Stuart Scott. So if you want, you can go ahead and take a screenshot of that. It's an extremely short read, but it's super encouraging. It is a book that that essentially just teaches you, gives you some really practical advice on how to defeat sin, because sin comes usually cyclical, right? Temptation, you're not always tempted to do something. It comes, right? It comes in a cycle. And when it comes, we should know how to conquer it. And this is why, we see, so it's Killing Sin Habits by Stuart Scott. You can find it on Amazon. There it is for you. You can find it on Amazon. It'll be a really quick read, but it'll be one that you want to actually hang on to. And if you know some people in your life that could benefit this, I would encourage you to just buy a couple of them and give it to them as a gift. Really, really accessible read. And one of the things that stood out to me, he goes through he goes through this chart here, and it's the temptation lust cycle. It's one of the beginning things right there, and it kind of is a clock that just goes in a circle, right? And one of the things that really stood out to me, because this is he talks about temptation, the feeble struggle, and then he talks about the rationalization of sin. And I love some of the phrases that he uses, because I've seen this in my own life and in my own walk. Some of the things, and so he says, below is a sample list of rationalizations which are heard in counseling or used personally. Do you recognize your rationalizations? And here's some of them that he writes. He says, I'm not hurting anyone else. Yeah, gotta flee. That's right. Flee temptation. That's right. It's not that big of a deal. God understands, right? Or God will forgive me after this. It's like a willingness to sin, knowing that God will forgive you. This sin is better than, and when it comes to pornography, looking at porn is better than actually cheating on my wife, right? We like to rationalize sin that way. I will give it up next time. This time will be my last time, right? Really good book, encouraging book, and really one of these books that will smack you over the head and and will challenge you, but it will be a blessing. So I encourage you guys to grab it. Killing Sin Habits, Conquering Sin with Radical Faith by Stuart Scott. Also, if you struggle with porn, I don't like saying porn addiction because we use the word addiction all the time in our culture, and the word addict makes it seem like it's something that you'll never get over, right? But I believe through the gospel you can. And but if you are struggling with this, that topic specifically, get in a community that can challenge you. Get in a community that will encourage you and love on you, and that will keep you accountable to what we see in the pages of Scripture and to the teachings of Jesus, because that is that is truly how we are built up through the Word of God preached in our churches, and through community, and the community of people who are seeking to follow Christ. So I'd encourage you, get in a church and be part of that church. Be part of that church community. That will be an immense help to you as well. God bless y'all. We will talk to you guys later. And I pray and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. God bless y'all.